Welcome to After Dusk with Don Piercy, where we're not afraid to talk about things that go bump in the night, with special guest co-hosts and so much more. We're bringing you the facts versus fiction and the history of it all. Remember, it's always darkest before dawn. Tune in every Wednesday at 10:30 and get your bite.
Picking up where we left off on After Dusk with Don Piercy with a continuation from last week. Get your bite on.
Is there only one? Could there be others? It's like, who knows? And in the end, I think as a cosmicist, if you can just survive this lifetime and kind of survive your evolution, you've done pretty well in the cosmicist mindset, right? So that's kind of where I stand. And to close on that is, going back to traditional biblical, right? So Elohim, right, is the Judaism or Jewish name for God. And of course, as we know, that would be the definitive first God, since it was there at creation, right? It created everything. Adam and Eve, right, created earth and Eve, right, as per the Old Testament. So yeah, Don, I mean, so when when we talk about Adam and Eve, when we talk about the creation of the world, when we talk about, there was dark and then there was light. Are we really talking about this in the concept of just this earth and just yours and I's experience? Or could that really be, if the Bible was quoted, or if the Bible was given, the words in the Bible and the story was given from God to man, could this really be, if this God is interjecting and actually nurturing mankind in some way, or the gods, is not the story of creation, and the Bible as a whole, not really saying, hey, in the beginning there was nothing and I made it all, and this is kind of your story on this earth, or maybe it may be many earth stories, but basically he said, look, this is what I did. And as far as dinosaurs and Nephalim and other things, very well could be, because remember, mankind as we know it on an evolutionary point of view didn't write. We didn't really form
it wasn't
writing.
It wasn't the same. And then after Adam and Eve started, maybe God sat there and thought, man, they suck. Let me start over.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, that's.
I mean, because after that, they started forming. You had God's people. He had chosen people for monarch. You've got where people started actually writing and taking notes and journaling these things that they're seeing, and then all of a sudden, but before that, I know that there's the Sumerian text, and you've got the Hindi, and you've got all these ancient texts, but in the Book of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're still finding new scripture today that's related. Right. So it's like, and even in the Bible, I believe it's in Isaiah, it talks about there being two sticks. You've got the stick of Judah and the stick of Ephraim, okay? And right. That you don't have the full message without both of them. So, right. And that's where, of course, but I don't want to get too deep into religion and my own beliefs and what people should believe, because, this is about the gods and the goddesses that have, of course, historical documents have been notated throughout time till Adam and Eve, but before that, no.
Is in fact, there's been actually a fair amount of writing about it in the last couple of years. But so what's kind of come to, I guess, historical perspective is that there was a period where Neanderthal, which was a much more rougher being of ourselves, like less, even more limited intelligence, a lot less sophisticated, in a lot of ways, other than they were probably biologically superior to us because they were tough. But Neanderthal man and Cro-Magnon man at some point, right, is Cro-Magnon man, which is now us modern humans. They diverge, right? So a bunch of Neanderthals started having these like offshoot kind of hybrided kids, and they're like, oh my God, these are the freaks of our clan, but they turn into us, right? Cro-Magnon, and then into what they quote say is like modern man, right? But they do know now that there was a time where Cro-Magnon and Neanderthals coexisted, but it's pretty evident that most likely Neanderthal man succumbed to a higher intelligent Cro-Magnon man. I believe it was, what was it? The famous, not Quest for Fire, the other one, Clan of the K-Bear. Remember, that's really kind of what that was about. It was Goldie Hawn's character was this Cro-Magnon, modern human. She can count past 10, or 10 for the Clan of the K-Bear people was like, oh my God, if you're lucky you can count to 5, 10 was like fantastic. And here she's like 10, 20, 30, right? And so that was kind of what that movie was about, was kind of this overlap and this conflict of dare I say it, superiority of the mind and ability, and then versus inferiority of the mind, although not necessarily by far inferiority of the body, because Neanderthals were capable of sleeping in a snowstorm with a rabbit skin on them, whereas we had to wear layers and layers of furs, right? So Neanderthal man was capable of taking down a mountain lion on its own, whereas we need to team up and use spears, right? So something has to be said about toughness. So I think kind of when you talk about Adam and Eve, kind of going back to that, there could be, and I'm just throwing out this as a perspective, is like, in your lost history, right? So like, when the Bible was dictated, by God, he just kind of left out what he felt was the irrelevant history, right? And this is like, and really, if you think about the Bible and all the subsequent, like the main religions to come to follow, are really like a huge leap forward. Jesus represented a very big leap forward in thought process for man. So physically, biologically, we're like as we are today. But intelligence-wise, we still were experiencing the world. We were still, learning about what makes things tick, and we were still living in that animalistic kind of mindset where, hey, if it's all right to kill someone over their shoes, or it's all right to wage war with just because you want that watering hole. And so here comes Jesus, and then later, comes Islam, then comes Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, but of course Judaism being the first. Judaism, remember, that was really the first the first kind of thing really to kind of focus on, we need to start harmonizing,
right?
And Jesus kind of solidified that message, So I think in that context, I think if God intervened, he just said, okay, you guys don't really need to worry about this part of history. Just, this is the story. This is what you need to focus on. If that makes sense.
Now on it.
Sorry, Mohammed.
It does. But there's, so much history on. Oh my gosh, so much history on it. But the ones that we're aware of, the Egyptian, the Norse, and we'll get more into the Egyptian too, but the Vikings, okay, they're the Viking gods, the Odin, okay, which was, of course, the father of Thor and
God all
Loki. And then Freya was the goddess of love and war, and Baldur, the god of peace. But yeah, I mean, and I don't know. There's so many religions that were based off of people that walk this earth, and for me, it's like, how could I pray to somebody that walked on the earth that wasn't God? Like, I would pray to the main source.
Well, see,
You know.
so, back to what I was saying is, right, cosmicist, Christian, I believe, but see, I also kind of adhere to my traditional, I'm Norwegian, right? I'm half Hungarian, half Norwegian, a little bit of English and other smatters aside, right? But I still kind of will, like, obviously, goddess of love, Freya, hey, what's up, girl? Help me out here, type of thing, right? I still kind of have these little prayers or these little things to my my ancestral gods and Norse gods. Tyr, god of war, right? When I'm out and things are about to go down, it's always I kind of think of Tyr. What would Tyr do? And I kind of like a little prayer to the god of war, right? And, F you, Odin, you know what I mean? Kind of, so I still do kind of keep, and I think, I think with all these gods, and if you notice, there's a lot of parallel, the Norse gods with the Greek gods and the Indian gods. If you look at all these cultures with all these gods, they all have a line of succession.
Right? They do.
You've got the All-Father, or the god, either whether it's a Christian god or Odin or
yeah, whether it be the Titans, the Greeks, the Norse,
right,
the Egyptians, it doesn't matter. So, and then they go to important religious figures. They do, their descendants are important religious figures, or important people that are Christians and they're not. But it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what religion anybody is, because history is history, number one. Okay, there were people back then, there are people now, so it doesn't matter. What we're talking about is creation itself, creator itself, and after coming to earth, if either we came to earth, or if it was the Big Bang Theory, or we were molded out of clay, it doesn't, we're here, we're breathing, and there's so much deep history in it and the roots of it. But it's like, okay, and the one thing, going back to the history and the roots, it's like, okay, you would hope that the descendants of the bad ones would want to cut their what do you call it, your strongholds, cut your strongholds to that, so you don't get your ancestors' karma. I'm just saying.
Right. Well, I think, when it comes to the idea of multiple gods, right, and is that each god represents, so God, what is God? God, the concept of God, religion in the minds of human beings, right? What is that? It's a focal point, right? So we've chosen this culturally, we've chosen this one representation that we all agree on, and we focus all our energies on that focal point, and we ask for it, in this world of chaos that we live in, especially in ancient man, and even today. What do we say? We say, dear Lord, help us, right? Help me through this, or help me get that, or help me, right? So what are many gods? Many gods, if you think about it, are just micro focal points, right? If you look at it, so instead of bothering, so it's kind of like, so if you pray to Freya for love and inspiration, artistry, right? That's your focal point. If you are a warrior, if you're on SEAL Team 6, right? You're gonna go on a very dangerous mission. You pray to Tyr, right? Help me through this. give me the strength and the power, right, to overcome, right?
Well, see, I've never prayed to anybody but God. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
so
but
I mean, for me,
if you look at history, right, God was broken down by these cultures into many gods, and each god represents a facet in their life, right? So, you know, like if you pray to the goddess of wind, right, you need wind for pollination for your crops. You pray to the god of rain and water, right? Or you pray to the god of fire so that the volcano that's a mile away doesn't blow up, right? You know what I mean? It's focal points. And you got to remember, we're talking about.
Thanks for tuning in to After Dusk with Dawn Piercy. Tune in next Wednesday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time to get your bite on. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you feel fit to buy me a cup of coffee once a month, you can do so at our Anchor.fm platform under a new podcast. Until next time, keep it real.